Why did you want to study diabetes in adolescents?
Type 1 diabetes and asthma were the two chronic conditions that had probably the most population that I could sample. And I was working at the time with someone who was an expert in type 1 diabetes. So I kind of just merged into that.
We looked through your recent study, Habits and Routines During Transitions Among Emerging Adults with Type 1 Diabetes. In this, you researched the habits and routines that can hinder like the proper self-management of diabetes. Could you explain what the most common barriers you found for the participants?
I was using a specific definition where a habit is something you do automatically without thinking. What do you do when you go off to college? Your classes are all at a different time. Mom's not there to remind you. Maybe mom was your cue to do it. Maybe waking up at the same time every day was your cue to do it. So they're not checking their blood glucose because they're not being reminded by mom or dad, or they're just in a totally different routine based on that life event change that's going on.
What surprised you the most while you were studying, diabetes in adolescents?
I had hypotheses. So one of my big findings was that impulse control influenced self-management. You're going to think, well, yeah, that would impact self-management, right? But until we had research, we didn't know that. So it was a surprise in a way, but not a surprise. Probably the one thing that totally surprised me is when I was trying to collect data. I had a large NIH-funded study, and we were following these young people over time when they graduated from high school to the first year out after high school. And would you not think that this age group, they would be technologically, they'd want to complete all the questionnaires online on a web-based program technologically? Was that what you would guess? That's what I thought too. 30% wanted me to send them a paper copy to fill out the questionnaire in a paper version and not go online. So that was a big surprise in terms of collecting the data.
What have you found to be the biggest challenge in your research, or just as a researcher in general?
Staying competitive to get funding to do your research is probably one of the biggest challenges. And it's all within the context of balancing all your academic faculty roles. And to be competitive for funding is you have to be on the cutting edge, like one step ahead of all the other researchers out there to get the funding. The study that you brought up about habits and routines that I just told you about, I have another study on that that's the quantitative. You saw the qualitative one. But where I was going to go with the findings from that study was to develop an intervention where I would work on them developing habits and routines. And somebody just did it right before I could submit the grant.
Are there any other researchers you've worked with or organizations that you've particularly enjoyed? And I don't know if you could just talk about how you have to build that relationship to.
Yeah, you do. It takes
be successful.
Relationship. And you do need those relationships. You need to have a team working with you. For example, you can tell as I talk, I'm more focused on behaviors that help them with self-management, where you need somebody on your team that knows the medical management as well, knows in depth the physiology, pathophysiology of and managing type 1 diabetes or type 2, whichever you're working on. I had on my team physicians from adolescent medicine in the School of Medicine. I had statisticians on my team. So the organizations I've been involved with the Society of Adolescent Medicine and Health, which is, even though they have medicine in their title, it is interdisciplinary. And so nurses and psychologists go to that organization, and that's been real beneficial in the past. I've also been involved in and still involved in the American Diabetes Association. Everybody has the same evidence out there from the studies, and they're moving in the same direction. And you got to be one step ahead of them.